My mother gave me a fertility tracking bracelet for my 13th birthday and said I was finally old enough to give her the baby she desperately wanted. She planned to use her 19-year-old assistant as the donor because she'd already done this successfully with 2 other girls at her birthing center. Her assistant helped me escape, but then she started grooming foster sisters with her mentor, who ran a network of women forcing teenage girls to have babies, so I had to save them too. At my 13th birthday party, my mother gathered our small family around the kitchen table and announced that I was finally old enough to give her the baby she desperately wanted. My mother had me when she was 15 and believed teenage bodies were designed for pregnancy. She'd been trying for another baby since I was 10 but suffered 3 miscarriages. Now 28, she decided her body was too old and mine was perfect. Dad had left 3 years earlier when her baby obsession consumed our lives. After she made the announcement, she presented me with a fertility tracking bracelet, explaining how it would monitor my cycle and tell us the best times for conception. What made it even worse was that she worked as a midwife at the local birthing center and had already arranged for her assistant Jake to be the donor. He was 19. That night she sat on my bed, showing me the nursery she'd been planning in the spare room. She talked about how special it was that I could give her this gift and how I'd go back to being a regular kid after the baby came. I nodded along because arguing with her never worked. She'd just cry about her losses and remind me how much she sacrificed raising me alone. The grooming started immediately. Jake came over for dinner 3 times a week and Mom would disappear into the kitchen, leaving us alone. She bought me makeup and mature clothes, saying I needed to look older for this to work. My bedroom door came off its hinges because we didn't keep secrets in our family. She threw away my stuffed animals and redecorated my room with photos of babies and pregnant women she delivered. I tried telling my school counselor something was wrong, but couldn't find the words. How do you explain your mother wants you pregnant at 13? Mom had already told them I was struggling with her recent miscarriage and might say concerning things. She started homeschooling me after that, claiming I needed less stress during this important time. The breaking point came 6 weeks later. Mom drugged my orange juice at dinner and I woke up in my bed with Jake sitting beside me. My shirt was unbuttoned and he looked miserable. He whispered that my mom threatened to report him for inappropriate conduct with a minor if he didn't cooperate. She had fabricated evidence ready to destroy his life. He was gay but terrified she'd out him to his religious family who paid his tuition. I pretended to still be drowsy, while Jake told my hovering mother nothing happened yet. When she left to make him tea, he slipped me his phone and told me to text anyone who could help. I messaged my dad with shaking hands, begging him to come get me. Jake deleted the conversation before Mom returned, but Dad had seen enough. The next morning, Mom cheerfully tested my urine for pregnancy hormones while humming nursery rhymes. When it came back negative, she reassured me we'd try again that night. She'd already called Jake to come over earlier. I played along, helping her prepare dinner and acting excited about baby names. Dad arrived with police officers just as Mom was dissolving something into my drink. She stayed calm initially, explaining I was troubled and making up stories for attention. She showed them my journal, where she'd forged entries about wanting to get pregnant. The officers seemed uncertain until Jake broke down and told them everything. He showed them texts where Mom threatened him and recordings he'd secretly made of her discussing the plan. Mom's composure cracked when they mentioned arrest. She grabbed my shoulder, saying I was killing my sibling by refusing to help her. She revealed she was pregnant again but would definitely miscarry without my baby to give her hope. She called me selfish and said her mother had done the same thing for their family. Grandmother had her at 14 to give her own mother a second chance at motherhood. The officers pulled her off me as she screamed about wasted fertile years and evolutionary duty. They found fertility substances prescribed for me hidden in her midwife bag, along with detailed ovulation charts and conception plans. Jake testified against her in exchange for immunity. During the trial, investigators uncovered something horrifying. Mom had successfully done this twice before with other young girls through the birthing center. She'd helped deliver their babies, then adopted them as a midwife, advocating for teen mothers. Those daughters were now in their 20s and too traumatized to testify. Mom got 18 months in minimum security because her lawyer argued she was mentally ill from pregnancy loss. I thought it was over when I moved in with Dad. I started therapy and slowly rebuilt my sense of safety. But last week, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Mom standing outside a middle school 3 towns over. She was talking to a young girl who looked about 12. The girl had the same dark hair and slight build as me and the 2 teenagers Mom had victimized before. The caption read, "Third time's the charm. This one's sister is perfect age 2 for 1 special." I recognized the girl from the news. She'd just been placed in foster care with her 8-year-old sister after their parents died in a car accident. Mom was wearing scrubs from a different birthing center and a volunteer badge that read, "Foster Family Mentor." My hands shook as I zoomed in on the photo. Around the older girl's wrist was a silver fertility tracking bracelet, identical to the one Mom had given me. I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. My therapist had warned me about triggers, but nothing prepared me for seeing Mom actively hunting new victims. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I tried to call Dad, dropping it twice before managing to dial. Dad answered on the second ring. I shoved the phone at him without speaking, my throat too tight to form words. He studied the image, his face darkening with each detail he noticed. The fertility bracelet, the foster care badge, the familiar predatory positioning of Mom's body as she leaned toward the girl. He immediately called my therapist for an emergency session. Dr. Martinez cleared her schedule, and we drove there in intense silence. In her office, I showed her the photo and watched her professional composure crack slightly. She excused herself to make some calls while Dad held my trembling hands. The next few hours blurred together. Dr. Martinez contacted the foster care agency in that district, but they insisted all their mentors underwent thorough background checks. Mom had used a different name and somehow passed their screening. The birthing center she claimed to work for had no record of her employment. Everything was fabricated, but fabricated well enough to fool the authorities. I spent that night curled in Dad's bed like I had those first weeks after the trial. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those 2 girls, sisters, orphans, perfect targets with no parents to protect them. Mom had learned from her mistakes with me. She wouldn't need to groom family members this time or deal with suspicious relatives. The next morning, I made a decision. If the system that gave Mom only 18 months couldn't protect these girls, I would have to do it myself. Dad tried to stop me when I said I was going to that middle school. But I reminded him that I was the only person who truly understood Mom's methods. I knew her patterns, her manipulation tactics, her exact words and gestures. We compromised. Dad would drive me there and stay close while I tried to find the girls. My therapist advised against it, but warning about re-traumatization, but I couldn't sit safely in therapy while Mom circled new prey. Those girls deserved someone who would fight for them the way Jake had fought for me. The 3-town drive felt endless. I practiced what I would say, how I would warn them without sounding insane. How do you tell a 12-year-old that the nice woman offering mentorship wants to force her to have a baby? How do you explain that the fertility bracelet is just the beginning? We parked across from the middle school just as classes let out. Students poured through the gates in chattering groups. I searched for dark hair and slight builds, my heart racing each time I spotted a possible match. Then I saw them. The older girl walked with her arm around her little sister, both carrying worn backpacks that looked too heavy for their frames. The silver bracelet caught the afternoon sun. I started toward them but froze when I spotted Mom. She stood by a blue sedan, waving at the girls with that same warm smile she used to practice in mirrors. The girls waved back and began walking toward her. My feet moved before my brain caught up. Dad called after me, but I was already running. I reached them just as Mom opened her car door. The girls startled at my sudden appearance. Up close, I could see the exhaustion in their eyes, the grief that made them vulnerable to any adult offering kindness. Mom's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on concerned confusion. She pretended not to recognize me, asking if I was lost and needed help finding my parents. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. I looked directly at the older girl and told her the bracelet was tracking her fertility. The words came out rushed and desperate. I said the woman was dangerous, that she hurt girls like us. Mom laughed, the sound sharp and practiced. She told the girls I was clearly unwell and she should call security. She reached for her phone, but I grabbed the older girl's wrist, showing her the faint scar where I'd cut my identical bracelet off with kitchen scissors. I told her my name, my age, what Mom had tried to do to me. The younger sister pressed closer to her sibling. The older girl looked between Mom and me, confusion and fear warring on her face. Mom's mask slipped for just a moment and I saw the rage underneath. She grabbed my arm, nails digging in, hissing that I was ruining everything again. That's when the older girl stepped back, pulling her sister with her. She'd seen the real Mom in that flash of anger. She started removing the bracelet with shaking fingers. Mom lunged forward, but Dad appeared, placing himself between her and the girls. Other parents began noticing the commotion. Mom switched tactics, tears streaming as she claimed I was stalking her, that she'd moved towns to escape her delusional daughter. She begged bystanders to call police, painting herself as a victim. Some people seemed to believe her. Others watched Dad's protective stance and my obvious terror with growing suspicion. The older girl found her voice. She told the gathering crowd that Mom had been visiting their foster home, bringing gifts and talking about babies constantly. She mentioned the strange vitamins Mom insisted they take, the questions about their periods, the way Mom photographed them for her mentorship portfolio. A teacher recognized the girls and intervened, ushering them back toward the school building. Mom tried to follow, but Dad blocked her path. She screamed that we were destroying her last chance, that her body was failing, that she needed those girls to complete her family. The mask had shattered completely. Someone had called the police. Mom saw the approaching cars and tried to run to her sedan. I don't know what possessed me, but I threw myself at her legs, tackling her to the asphalt. We struggled briefly before Dad pulled me off. Mom lay there sobbing about fertile years wasted, about ungrateful daughters who denied their purpose. The officers who arrived included one who remembered Mom's case. He recognized her despite the dyed hair and weight loss. They found fertility substances in her car, along with forged medical credentials and detailed files on 7 different foster girls across 3 counties. The sisters were just her latest targets. I gave my statement while a paramedic cleaned the scrapes on my palms. The older girl found me before social services took them to a new placement. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you." Her little sister gave me a small origami crane she'd been carrying in her pocket. I still have it. Mom violated her parole by contacting minors and possessing fertility substances. This time she got 5 years, no minimum security. The foster system implemented new screening procedures, though I doubt they'll catch the next predator who's determined enough. At least those 2 girls were safe. I thought I'd feel relief when they drove Mom away in handcuffs. Instead, I felt hollow. In the car ride home, I asked Dad why she chose us, why those girls, why anyone. He didn't have answers. Dr. Martinez says some questions don't have satisfying explanations, that evil doesn't always make sense, but I couldn't stop thinking about patterns. Mom targeted specific types, dark hair, slight builds, early developers, girls who looked like they could be her biological daughters. She wasn't just stealing babies. She was trying to recreate herself through us, to fix whatever she believed was broken in her own childhood. The realization hit me during a therapy session 2 weeks later. Grandmother had done the same thing to Mom, forced her to have a baby at 14 for her own mother. Mom had revealed it during her arrest, but I'd been too traumatized to process it. The cycle went back generations, each woman believing she was entitled to her daughter's body, to grandchildren produced on demand. I asked Dr. Martinez if Mom was evil or sick. She said it could be both. That trauma didn't excuse perpetuating abuse. I understood that intellectually, but part of me grieved for the 14-year-old girl Mom had been, pregnant and scared while her mother celebrated getting a new baby to raise. Jake reached out through my therapist. He was in counseling too, dealing with guilt over what almost happened. He'd testified against Mom, but still felt responsible for not acting sooner. We met for coffee in a public place with Dad nearby. Jake looked healthier, like the weight of Mom's threats had finally lifted. He told me Mom had approached him at the birthing center specifically because she knew about his sexuality. She'd overheard him on a personal call and filed that information away for future manipulation. Everything she did was calculated, from choosing vulnerable employees to selecting victims without strong support systems. The foster sisters sent a letter through their social worker. They were adjusting to their new placement with an older couple who'd raised dozens of foster kids. The older girl had started therapy to process both her parents' death and Mom's grooming attempts. They were healing slowly. I returned to regular school that fall. Most kids didn't know my story, which helped me feel normal. Some days were harder than others. I'd panic seeing pregnant women or fertility clinic advertisements. Baby store displays made me nauseated, but I was building a life beyond what Mom had tried to make me. Dad installed new locks and a security system. We both knew Mom would get out eventually, that 5 years wasn't forever. He talked about moving states when her release date approached, starting fresh where she couldn't find us. Part of me wanted to run, another part refused to let her drive us from our home. The origami crane sat on my dresser next to a photo of me at 14, taken just weeks after Dad rescued me. In it, I'm smiling tentatively at a school dance, wearing a dress I picked myself. No fertility bracelet, no forced maturity, just a teenage girl learning to be young again. Sometimes I wondered about the two women from Mom's previous victims, the ones too traumatized to testify. Did they have nightmares about her, too? Did they flinch when strangers commented on their children's features? I hoped they'd found peace somehow, though I knew the scars never fully faded. My story spread through survivor networks. Other girls reached out with similar experiences, though none quite as extreme. We formed a small online support group, sharing resources and validating each other's anger. It helped knowing I wasn't alone, that other daughters had survived mothers who saw them as incubators rather than people. But the real work happened in weekly therapy, unpacking the layers of manipulation and grooming. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that Mom's fake tears and guilt trips were weapons, not genuine emotions. That her obsession with babies was about control, not love. That I deserved bodily autonomy regardless of her fertility timeline. The hardest part was accepting that I'd never have a real mother. The woman who gave birth to me saw me as a means to an end, a fertile vessel for her obsessions. Other kids complained about overprotective parents while I'd had one who removed my bedroom door to ensure access. The unfairness of it burned sometimes. Dad did his best to fill both parental roles. He learned to braid hair from YouTube tutorials and kept period supplies stocked without making it weird. He never missed a therapy appointment or school event. When I had nightmares, he'd make hot chocolate and sit with me until dawn. He couldn't erase what Mom did, but he made sure I felt safe and valued. Still, questions haunted me. Would I ever trust authority figures who were supposed to protect children? Would I be able to have healthy relationships without fearing manipulation? Would the trauma echo through generations like it had in Mom's family? Dr. Martinez assured me that awareness was the first step to breaking cycles. The nightmares started that same night. I woke screaming, convinced Mom stood over my bed with a syringe. Dad rushed in to find me pressed against the wall, sheets soaked with sweat. He sat with me until sunrise, neither of us mentioning the obvious truth. Mom would be out in less than 5 years. During my next therapy session, Dr. Martinez noticed the dark circles under my eyes. I explained about the nightmares, the constant checking of locks, the way my heart raced whenever I saw women who resembled Mom. She adjusted my treatment plan, adding techniques for managing hypervigilance. We practiced grounding exercises while I clutched the origami crane from the younger foster sister. 3 months passed with deceptive calm. I attended school, maintained decent grades, and slowly rebuilt friendships. Dad drove me everywhere, never complaining about the extra precautions we both needed. We developed routines that made me feel safer. Morning, check-ins, afternoon texts, evening walks around our neighborhood where neighbors knew to watch for strangers. The illusion of safety shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. I was walking to Dad's car after school when I noticed a woman watching from across the street. Not Mom, but something about her triggered every alarm in my body. She had the same predatory stillness, the same calculated observation. When our eyes met, she smiled and waved as if we knew each other. I practically dove into Dad's car. He noticed my panic and pulled away quickly, checking mirrors for anyone following. At home, I described the woman while Dad took notes. Medium height, brown hair, professional clothes, nothing obviously threatening except the way she'd studied me like Mom used to study her potential victims. The woman appeared again 2 days later, this time at the grocery store. She pushed her cart past us, making brief eye contact before disappearing down another aisle. Dad abandoned our shopping to get me home. We called Dr. Martinez, who suggested increasing my sessions and considering whether we were dealing with paranoia or a genuine threat. Jake provided the answer. He called through my therapist, voice shaking as he explained what he discovered. Mom had maintained correspondence with several women from prison, former patients, other midwives, women who shared her beliefs about teenage pregnancy. He'd recognized one from the birthing center, a woman named Nathaniel, who'd always given him uncomfortable feelings. Nathaniel had been Mom's mentor when she first started midwifery. She was an older woman who ran a private practice specializing in young mothers. Jake remembered Mom speaking reverently about her, calling her a visionary who understood women's true purpose. He'd thought it was just professional admiration until he'd overheard conversations about breeding cycles and optimal fertility windows. Armed with this information, Dad contacted our local police. They took our concerns seriously, given Mom's history, but explained their limitations. Nathaniel hadn't committed any crimes. Following me wasn't illegal if she maintained distance. They promised increased patrols near our house and school, but we all knew it wasn't enough. I started carrying pepper spray and a personal alarm. Dad installed cameras covering every angle of our property. We varied our routines, took different routes, stayed hypervigilant. The stress affected everything. My grades dropped. I quit the drama club I'd finally felt brave enough to join. Every woman became a potential threat. Dr. Martinez worked with me on differentiating real danger from trauma responses. We couldn't live in constant fear, but we also couldn't ignore legitimate threats. She helped me develop safety plans that felt empowering rather than paranoid. I learned to trust my instincts while not letting fear control every decision. A month into this new vigilance, Nathaniel made her move. I was at the library working on a history project when she approached my table. She sat down uninvited, placing a folder between us. Her voice was soft, maternal, terrifying in its gentleness as she explained she'd been watching me for Mom. Inside the folder were photos, me walking to school, Dad's car, our driveway, our house from various angles. The last photo showed 2 young girls I didn't recognize, but their dark hair and slight builds made my stomach turn. Nathaniel explained they were perfect candidates, just waiting for the right timing. She leaned forward, breath smelling of peppermint and something medicinal. Mom needed me to understand the importance of legacy, she said, the gift of life passing through generations. These girls could fulfill that destiny if I remained too selfish. She slid a letter across the table. Mom's handwriting was visible through the thin paper. My hand found the panic alarm in my pocket. The shrieking sound sent Nathaniel stepping back, hands raised innocently. Other library patrons turned to stare. She gathered her folder calmly, mentioning she'd be in touch about Mom's proposal. Security arrived as she walked away, but she'd broken no laws, just a woman trying to deliver a letter. Dad arrived within minutes, face pale as I explained what happened. We took the letter to the police station, handling it carefully for fingerprints. The officer read it with growing disgust. Mom wrote about forgiveness, about understanding her calling, about the 2 girls who could be saved if I just cooperated. She promised to leave me alone forever if I helped her just once. The detective explained the letter's careful wording, nothing explicitly illegal, just manipulative emotional appeals. They could document it, add it to Mom's file, but couldn't arrest Nathaniel for delivery. The photos were taken from public property, no direct threats were made. The system that had given Mom such a light sentence continued failing her potential victims. That night, I made a decision that Dr. Martinez would later call both brave and reckless. If Nathaniel was Mom's messenger, she might lead us to those 2 girls in the photos. I convinced Dad to let me return to my normal routine while he followed at a distance. We needed information the police couldn't legally obtain. The next week tested every coping skill I'd learned. I attended school, walked familiar routes, made myself visible bait. Nathaniel appeared sporadically, always watching from legal distances. Dad tracked her movements, building a pattern. She frequented a specific coffee shop, visited a suburban house registered to her practice, and spent afternoons at various schools. Jake helped investigate Nathaniel's practice online. Her website promoted natural birthing methods and specialized care for young mothers. The testimonials seemed legitimate until he noticed patterns. Several mentioned unexpected pregnancies shortly after beginning treatment. Others praised Nathaniel for helping them understand their body's purposes. The language echoed Mom's manipulation tactics. We compiled everything into a detailed report. Dad found a sympathetic detective who'd worked Mom's original case. She couldn't launch an official investigation without evidence of crimes, but she advised us on legal ways to gather information. She also connected us with a social worker who specialized in protecting at-risk youth. The social worker, Alexandra, became our unofficial ally. She couldn't directly intervene without reports of abuse, but she could educate foster families about warning signs. She began visiting homes in Nathaniel's area, conducting wellness checks that included discussions about inappropriate adult relationships and grooming tactics. 2 weeks into our investigation, I spotted the girls from Nathaniel's photos. They were leaving a dance studio, the older one helping her sister with an oversized dance bag. No adults waited for them. They walked toward a bus stop, the older girl checking her phone repeatedly. The fertility tracking bracelet was gone, but I noticed fresh marks on her wrist where it had been. I approached carefully, Dad watching from his car. The older girl tensed when she saw me, recognizing something in my approach. I introduced myself by name only, mentioning I'd once taken classes at their studio. We chatted about dance teachers and upcoming recitals while I assessed their situation. The younger sister mentioned their foster mom was sick again. The older girl quickly hushed her, but I caught the implication. Someone was making their guardian ill, creating opportunities for the girls to need alternative supervision. I gave them my phone number, saying they could call if they ever needed homework help or a ride home. Dad followed their bus route, noting which stop they used. We passed this information to Alexandra, who prioritized a wellness check for their foster home. She discovered the foster mother had been experiencing mysterious stomach ailments that coincided with Nathaniel's visits as a lactation consultant for another child in the home. The pieces formed a horrifying picture. Nathaniel was positioning herself as a helpful medical professional while systematically creating vulnerabilities. She'd dose the foster mother with mild toxins, then offer to help with the children during her recovery. Classic predator behavior refined through years of practice. Alexandra couldn't prove the poisoning without tests. The foster mother refused. The woman trusted Nathaniel, believed the stomach issues were stress-related. She was grateful for the help with her foster children, especially the 2 sisters who required extra attention. Nathaniel had given the older girl vitamins for her developing body. I remembered those vitamins. Mom had given me similar ones, claiming they were prenatal supplements to prepare my body. Dr. Martinez had later explained they were fertility substances that could cause serious harm to a developing teenager. The urgency to act intensified, but legal channels remained frustratingly limited. Dad suggested we needed more evidence. If we could document Nathaniel providing inappropriate medical treatment or substances to minors, authorities could intervene. He purchased a small camera I could wear, though we both knew the risks. If Nathaniel discovered our surveillance, she might accelerate her timeline or disappear entirely. The opportunity came through Jake. Nathaniel contacted him, claiming to need assistance with a young patient. She knew about his history with Mom, painted it as a chance for redemption. He could help guide a troubled teen toward her destiny, make up for failing Mom's vision. Jake played along while secretly recording their conversations. Nathaniel revealed her plan during their 3rd meeting. The older foster girl was perfect, just like I'd been, already developing, orphaned, desperate for maternal guidance. The younger sister could be groomed as backup. Nathaniel had been slowly increasing the fertility substances, tracking the girl's cycle through smart technology disguised as fitness apps. She needed Jake to play a specific role, not as the donor this time, but as a trusted male figure who could normalize intimate conversations. He would prepare the girl psychologically while Nathaniel handled the physical preparation. She'd already identified a donor from her practice, a young man who believed he was contributing to fertility research. Jake recorded everything, his hands shaking as Nathaniel detailed timing and methods. She'd learned from Mom's mistakes, she said. No family members to interfere, no paper trails leading back to her. The foster system's overwhelmed bureaucracy would work in their favor. By the time anyone noticed, the girl would already be pregnant. We took the recordings to our detective contact immediately. This time, she had enough for a warrant. The investigation moved quickly but quietly. They couldn't risk Nathaniel destroying evidence or fleeing. Alexandra increased her visits to the foster home, always finding reasons to check on the sisters without raising suspicion. I struggled with waiting while authorities built their case. Every day felt like borrowed time for those girls. The older sister had started showing signs of grooming. Alexandra reported she'd become withdrawn, secretive about her activities, protective of her phone, classic indicators that made my skin crawl with recognition. Dr. Martinez increased my sessions as the stress triggered severe PTSD symptoms. I wasn't sleeping, could barely eat, and jumped at every sound. Dad took time off work to stay with me. How does someone get so good at finding weak spots in the system like Nathaniel does? She picked foster kids with no family to protect them, made the foster mom sick just enough to need help, and even used fitness apps to track cycles. We both knew I was reliving my trauma through these girls, but knowing didn't make it easier to bear. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The younger foster sister called the number I'd given them. Her voice was small, scared, asking if I could pick them up from the library. Their foster mom was sick again, and the nice lady who usually helped was acting strange. She tried to separate the sisters, insisting the older one needed a special doctor's appointment. Dad and I reached the library in record time. The girls huddled in the children's section, the older one pale and shaking. She'd refused to go with Nathaniel, some instinct warning her despite the grooming. Nathaniel had grabbed her arm, left bruises, and threatened to report her as a troubled teen who needed psychiatric intervention. We called Alexandra and our detective immediately. The bruises, combined with Jake's recordings, provided enough for immediate intervention. Within hours, police arrested Nathaniel at her practice. They found fertility substances, tracking devices, and files on dozens of potential victims spanning 3 states. The foster sisters went to emergency placement while authorities investigated their original home. The foster mother tested positive for low levels of EPAC, a substance that causes vomiting and weakness. Nathaniel had been slowly poisoning her for months, creating opportunities to access the children. During Nathaniel's arrest, investigators discovered the true scope of her network. She corresponded with 12 women in various prisons, all convicted of crimes against children. They shared strategies, identified victims, and planned for when members were released. Mom wasn't unique in her obsession. She was part of something larger and more organized. The younger foster sister's origami crane took on new meaning. She'd made dozens, leaving them places as a way to track where she'd been, a breadcrumb trail in case she disappeared. At 8 years old, she'd sensed danger and created her own safety net. Her courage humbled me. Both sisters entered intensive therapy with specialists in trauma and grooming. Their new placement was 3 hours away, carefully vetted with experienced parents who understood their needs. Alexandra personally oversaw their case, ensuring no one could slip through bureaucratic cracks again. Jake testified against Nathaniel just as he had against Mom. His recordings proved instrumental in building a federal case about the network. He entered witness protection afterward, finally free from the world of predators who tried to use his vulnerabilities against him. He sent one last message through Dr. Martinez, thanking me for showing him that victims could become heroes. Nathaniel received 25 years with no possibility of early release. The judge cited the calculated nature of her crimes, the vulnerability of her victims, and the clear evidence of an ongoing conspiracy. Other members of her network faced investigation. Mom's correspondence privileges were revoked. Her release date was extended due to continued criminal activity from prison. The trial was harder than I'd anticipated. Testifying meant reliving not just Nathaniel's stalking, but Mom's original abuse. The defense attorney tried to paint me as vindictive, targeting innocent women who shared Mom's profession. I held firm, the origami crane in my pocket reminding me who I was protecting. Dad never left my side during the proceedings. He'd taken indefinite leave from work, prioritizing my healing over everything else. We spent quiet evenings learning new recipes, watching old movies, rebuilding our sense of normal. He'd become an expert at recognizing my triggers, knowing when to give space and when to offer comfort. Dr. Martinez helped me process the complex emotions of victory mixed with exhaustion. We'd saved those girls, exposed a network, prevented future victims, but the cost felt overwhelming sometimes. I'd lost any remaining innocence about human nature, understood too well how predators operated, and carried knowledge no teenager should possess. Foster sisters sent a final letter before entering their new life. They thanked me for believing them, for acting when adults couldn't or wouldn't. The older girl wrote about removing the bracelet, how she'd known something was wrong, but felt powerless until I'd shown her she had choices. They were learning to trust again, slowly. School felt surreal after everything. My classmates worried about tests and dating, while I carried pepper spray and checked exits in every room. Some teachers knew my story, offered extra support and flexibility. Others saw only a troubled teen with attendance issues. I existed between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Dad and I started seriously discussing relocation, not from fear anymore, but from a desire for fresh starts, somewhere Mom's release wouldn't haunt us, where I could attend college without looking over my shoulder. Dr. Martinez supported the idea, suggesting distance might help separate trauma from daily life. We visited potential cities during school breaks. Each had pros and cons, but I found myself drawn to a college town 4 states away. It had excellent therapy resources, a strong women's center, and no connections to our past. Dad found job opportunities there, even toured departments near campus for when I was ready. The decision solidified when we learned about Mom's prison activities. Despite losing correspondence privileges, she'd been recruiting fellow inmates, teaching them her grooming methods, women who would be released before her who could continue the work. The network Nathaniel represented was just one tentacle of something deeper. Alexandra kept us informed about the foster sisters' progress. They were thriving in their new home, attending school, making friends. The older girl had joined a support group for grooming survivors. The younger one still made origami cranes, but now gave them as gifts rather than breadcrumbs. They were healing. My own healing remained complicated. Some days felt almost normal, others, I could barely leave the house. Dr. Martinez explained trauma recovery wasn't linear, that setbacks didn't mean failure. We adjusted strategies as needed, celebrated small victories, and acknowledged the ongoing nature of survival. The online support group I joined became a lifeline. Other survivors understood the specific horror of maternal abuse, the confusion of being harmed by someone supposed to protect you. We shared resources, validated each other's anger, and reminded ourselves that breaking cycles was possible, even when it felt overwhelming. Dad started attending his own therapy, processing secondary trauma from supporting me. He'd been my rock through everything, but rocks could crack under enough pressure. Watching him prioritize his mental health taught me about sustainable healing. We couldn't pour from empty cups, couldn't save others while drowning ourselves. As Mom's adjusted release date approached, still years away, but somehow too soon, we finalized our relocation plans. New city, new home, new chapter, not running away, but moving towards something better. Dr. Martinez provided referrals for therapists there, ensuring continuity of care. I packed the last box while Dad checked the moving truck's tire pressure for the 3rd time. The new apartment keys sat heavy in my pocket, 4 states between us and everything that happened. Dr. Martinez had arranged my first appointment with her colleague for next week. I'd already memorized the route from our new place to the office. The Foster sisters' latest letter arrived that morning. They'd included photos from their school's spring concert, both smiling genuinely in matching dresses their new parents bought them. The older one wrote about joining the debate team, finding her voice in structured arguments. The younger one had started teaching origami at the community center, turning her coping mechanism into community connection. Jake sent updates through secure channels. He'd enrolled in nursing school under his new identity, determined to help vulnerable patients the right way. His messages always ended with gratitude for showing him courage looked different than he'd imagined. He was dating someone kind who knew his whole story and loved him anyway. 3 weeks before our move, I received notice about Mom's prison situation. She'd attempted to recruit her cellmate, a woman serving time for check fraud. The cellmate reported Mom's grooming attempts immediately, having heard warnings from other inmates. Mom lost all privileges and faced solitary confinement. Even behind bars, she couldn't stop hunting. Dad and I spent our last night in town having dinner at our favorite restaurant. The owner knew our story, had testified as a character witness during Mom's trial. She hugged us goodbye, slipping extra dessert into our takeout bag. Small kindnesses like that had sustained us through everything. The drive to our new city took 2 days. We stopped at roadside motels, checking locks and avoiding ground floor rooms out of habit. Dad played my favorite podcast while I navigated, both of us careful not to mention why we knew this route so well from our previous scouting trips. Our new apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. 2 bedrooms, 2nd floor, multiple exits, and neighbors who didn't know our history. Dad had already installed new locks and a security system before we arrived. Old habits would fade slowly, but we were trying. I enrolled at the local high school as a transfer student with sealed records. The counselor knew basics for safety planning, but not details. My classmates saw just another new kid adjusting to senior year. I joined the creative writing club, channeling experiences into fiction that felt safer than memoir. Dr. Martinez's colleague, Dr. Chen, specialized in trauma recovery for young survivors. Our first session felt like starting over and continuing simultaneously. She'd reviewed my files, but wanted to hear my perspective fresh. I appreciated not being just a case study continuation. Dad found work at a manufacturing plant, grateful for normal problems like traffic and overtime schedules. He joined a support group for parents of traumatized children. Hearing him process his own journey helped me understand recovery wasn't just my responsibility. 6 months into our new life, I received word about the Foster sisters' adoption finalization. Their new parents sent photos from the courthouse, everyone wearing matching family t-shirts. The older girl had started mentoring other foster kids about recognizing predatory behavior. The younger one's origami cranes decorated their family's Christmas tree. Alexandra wrote occasionally with updates on system improvements. They'd implemented mandatory training about grooming recognition, though she admitted bureaucracy moved slowly. At least some foster families now knew warning signs Mom and Nathaniel had exploited. I struggled with dating, hyper-aware of manipulation tactics and power imbalances. Dr. Chen helped me differentiate between reasonable caution and trauma responses. My first relationship lasted 3 months before we realized I wasn't ready. He handled the breakup kindly, which somehow made it harder. The online support group evolved as members healed at different paces. Some left to pursue lives without constant reminders. Others stayed to welcome new survivors. I found balance in contributing when I could, stepping back when I couldn't. Recovery wasn't linear, and that was okay. A year after moving, I spoke at a local conference for social workers. Not about details, but about recognizing signs adults miss, how predators use legitimate positions to access victims, why children don't always disclose abuse in ways professionals expect. The audience listened intently, taking notes that might save someone. Dad met someone through his support group, another single parent navigating trauma's aftermath. They took things slowly, understanding why trust came hard. Watching him rebuild his own life while supporting mine showed me healing happened in layers. I graduated high school with honors, my college essay carefully crafted to explain gaps without revealing everything. The admissions committee saw resilience and determination. I chose a school 2 hours away, close enough for safety, but far enough for independence. My 18th birthday passed quietly. Dad made my favorite breakfast while I opened cards from unexpected sources. Jake sent a gift card with a note about surviving another year. The Foster sisters drew a collaborative art piece. Dr. Martinez mailed a compass with "Keep Going" engraved on the back. College orientation felt surreal. My roommate chattered about normal freshman fears while I quietly mapped exits and counseling center locations. I'd chosen psychology as my major, hoping to understand minds like Mom's and help survivors like me. Knowledge felt like reclaiming power. I kept the origami crane on my dorm desk, next to a photo of Dad and me at graduation. Sometimes I unfolded it carefully, reading the tiny message the younger foster sister had hidden inside. "Thank you for seeing us." Those 4 words reminded me why speaking up mattered, even when systems failed. Mom's release date remained circled on my calendar, not from fear, but from preparedness. Dad and I had plans within plans, legal protections, distance, and documentation. We'd learned to live with background vigilance while refusing to let it define our foreground. During winter break, I visited the foster sisters with their parents' permission. They'd grown taller, more confident, surrounded by evidence of their new life. Drawings covered the refrigerator, sports trophies lined shelves, normal childhood artifacts Mom had tried to steal from all of us. The older sister showed me her journal filled with poetry about survival and sisterhood. She'd submitted pieces to teen literary magazines, finding her voice through written words. The younger one had started teaching origami at the community center, turning her coping mechanism into community connection. Their adoptive mother pulled me aside before I left, tears in her eyes as she thanked me for saving her daughters. I corrected her gently. They'd saved themselves by speaking up, by trusting their instincts, by refusing Nathaniel's final appointment. I'd just been someone who listened. Back at college, I threw myself into coursework and cautious friendships. My abnormal psychology professor unknowingly used cases similar to Mom's as teaching examples. I took detailed notes, understanding patterns I'd lived through but couldn't articulate before. Spring semester brought unexpected challenges. A news article about Nathaniel's sentencing went viral in true crime communities. Someone connected me to the case through court records. My name trended locally for exactly 3 days before newer scandals displaced it. I stayed off social media until the attention passed. Dr. Chen helped me process the unwanted exposure. We worked on boundaries between public knowledge and private healing. I learned to deflect curious questions without shame or detailed explanations. My story belonged to me, shared only when and how I chose. Dad called every Sunday evening, our tradition since I'd started college. We talked about normal things mostly, his job, my classes, the weather, but we always ended with check-ins about safety and mental health. Some families bonded over sports or hobbies. We bonded over survival. As sophomore year approached, I felt shifts in my healing journey. Nightmares came less frequently. I could walk past baby stores without nausea. Pregnant women triggered sadness rather than panic. Progress measured in small freedoms Mom had tried to steal forever. The foster sisters graduated to high school and middle school, respectively. Their parents sent photos of first days, both girls wearing confidence like armor. They joined activities, made friends, built lives Mom and Nathaniel never touched. Their resilience inspired my own continued healing. I changed my major to social work with a minor in psychology. The decision felt right, combining understanding with action. My advisor, unaware of my history, praised my intuitive grasp of vulnerable populations. I didn't explain why I understood predatory dynamics so well. Jake graduated nursing school with honors. He sent a photo of himself in scrubs working at a children's hospital under his new name. His message was brief but powerful, making it right. We'd both found ways to transform our trauma into purpose. Mom's prison record showed continued attempts to manipulate other inmates. Each incident added time to her sentence, her own obsession becoming her cage. I felt neither satisfaction nor pity, just relief that walls and rules contained her for now. As I packed for junior year, I found the fertility bracelet I'd kept as evidence. The silver had tarnished, its sinister purpose reduced to broken metal. I threw it away without ceremony. Some artifacts deserved preservation, others needed destruction to complete healing. The drive back to campus felt different this time, familiar rather than frightening. I built a life Mom couldn't touch, surrounded by people who knew my worth beyond reproductive potential. The rearview mirror showed the past exactly where it belonged, behind me, but visible enough to navigate forward. My new apartment near campus had roommates who'd become genuine friends. They knew I had a complicated history but respected my boundaries about details. We cooked together, studied together, complained about professors together. Normal college life I'd fought to achieve. That evening, I sat at my desk organizing syllabi for the new semester. The origami crane caught sunset light, casting delicate shadows across my textbooks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I felt something Mom had tried to steal forever, peace. I opened my laptop to write in the private blog Dr. Chen had suggested. Today's entry was short, year 3 of freedom, still healing, still here. I saved it, closed the computer, and prepared for whatever came next. Recovery wasn't a destination, but a journey I'd keep walking one day at a time. Comment down below a timestamp that was odd, and while you're at it, you might as well like the video.